The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everyone, thank you for joining our School on Wheels lunch hour workshop, Tutor Solutions, Advice and Tips to Suit Your Students' Needs. My name is Natasha Bayes and I'm the Team Leader of Volunteer Engagement for School on Wheels. I'm happy to have me today for the 5th time, Allison Maldonado, our Skid Row Learning Center instructor here at School on Wheels. Allison will be answering questions submitted in advance from some of our tutors as well as any questions you have during the hour. She will also be giving some practical tips on some highly requested topics, including solutions to common behavior issues, resources for creative curriculum, tips to deal with the pressures of achieving goals within grading periods, and strategies in special education. For the purposes of sound quality, all participants are currently muted. You have the ability to ask questions at any time using the questions pane, shown here. Just simply type in a question and hit send. We'll select the order for questions and read them aloud. I wanted to give you a brief introduction of our host for the next hour. Allison has been our Skid Row learning instructor for over 4 years, right?
About
four and a half. She began her teaching career as a community college mentor for non-traditional students such as single mothers, first-generation college students, and disabled persons. After graduating from UCLA with a degree in English literature and composition, Allison worked as a special education teacher for 5 years. As a teacher, Allison worked with students living with autism, emotional disturbance, learning disabilities, speech and language impairment, and various other disabilities. So thank you. At this time, I'd like to introduce Allison and turn it over to you. Thank you so much for doing this workshop.
Hi, everybody. It's good to be here. I really enjoyed doing this workshop. And I always love hearing the feedback from how tips are going and how sessions are going. So I'm really excited to share some ideas with you guys and to hear about how things are going after. So like Natasha said, my name is Allison. We're on Skid Row. I'm Miss Allison or Teacher Lady, depending on who you talk to. I've been with School on Wheels for about 4.5 years now, and I absolutely adore it. I started, as Natasha mentioned, as a special education teacher, and working with those students, we decided to do a community service project for School on Wheels, and I ended up enjoying the program so much that I am now here with you guys after 4.5 years. So let's get started. Just kind of to go over some of the themes, like Natasha mentioned, I was an English major, so of course I had to break this down like a little outline for you guys. So some of the themes we're going to go over is addressing SLD, which stands for specific learning disabilities. And when I say addressing, we're talking about how to work with them and kind of not diagnose those. So I just want to mention that we're going to be talking about addressing learning disabilities, but in no way are we talking about how to diagnose or even being able to label with learning disability. Next, we're going to talk about tutor growth and mindset. We're always talking about how we're going to help the kids, but I just want to remind everybody that we can't help the students until you make sure you're doing well yourself and you're feeling good. So we're going to definitely talk about how we can make that happen. We're going to talk about communication in the team. Communication, how to communicate, proper ways and tips on how to communicate appropriately, and the team, who are we working with and who is a part of the team to make sure that we're making progress with our student. We're going to talk about how to find progress and follow up with that student in case there is or is not a team. We'll talk about different ways to feel like you're making progress and how to do follow up to see that progress. We're also going to talk about a topic that comes up a lot, motivation, focus, and frustration. And this is ways to combat it when it's happening and ways to combat it to ensure that it doesn't happen, or ways to combat it once it does happen. So once we get to that topic, we're going to talk about many different options available. One thing I also want to mention to everybody is as we're going through these questions, I really want you to keep in mind that when I'm answering the questions, I do answer the questions to the best of the ability of the information given. So if I don't fully answer the question as you requested, please feel free. I do provide an email address. We can discuss more. I can do some follow-up with you all, and we can definitely make sure that we're helping the student to the best that we need. Also want to let you know that when you're listening to these ideas and tips, please keep in mind that they are all very, very flexible. So if something looks a little childish, think about how you can adapt it for an older student. If something looks a little mature, think about how you can make it a little more childish or playful for a younger student. So please don't take these at face value. Definitely look at them as a type of brainstorming that we're doing together and a foundation for you to kind of grow with your student and build onto your sessions. All right, so let's get started. The first question we had was, I think my student has a learning disability. What should I do to address it? As someone who worked with special education students in 100% population for almost 5 years, I will tell you, I even to this day cannot diagnose a learning disability. It's something that you can notice maybe things and signs, but please don't ever feel like you are going to be the one who's going to say, oh, this student has this, we figured it out, solution, now we have to solve the problem. First thing we're going to talk about is, even in general, what is the deficit versus a disability? A lot of our students have deficits. So the deficit is just that there's no foundation to what they're working on. So if you're working with a student and you're noticing that their reading is just really poor and not up to standards of what you would expect, I wouldn't jump to the conclusion of a disability on that aspect. I would definitely stop and think of the deficits. If you're doing something at 4th grade level, should we go backwards and check a 3rd grade level, a 2nd grade level to see how confident they are there? Are they still showing those signs of speech impairment, of inability to sound out, letter recognition at a couple grade levels lower? That might be a little bit of a sign for a disability as opposed to a small deficit. So please know, a lot of times if a student's struggling, it might just be they don't have those foundational skills to do the task at hand. Next, we're going to talk about utilizing assessments. So when you're working with a student who you're not sure if it's a deficit, disability, or what's going on there, one thing you can utilize is an assessment. I use these, no joke, daily at the Skid Row Learning Center. Every student that signs up here is assessed within 24 hours of signing up. So what I'm going to show you here, I'm going to click on this link and take you guys to the School on Wheels academic page. This is where you can pull up the assessments to give to the students. The biggest tip I'm going to give you right here is, if you're working with a student and you're kind of wondering if they have a disability or deficit, always test the grade level before the one they're in. So if you're working right now with a 5th grader, you are not going to give them a 5th grade assessment because they're not done with 5th grade. So they're definitely not going to be able to pass that. You're going to want to jump down to a 4th grade or a 3rd grade and give them that assessment to make sure you find those foundational gaps. When you click on the assessment, you have the option between an online and a paper assessment. If you give the student the paper assessment, I highly recommend getting rid of page 1 when you hand it to the student, because if you're giving a 4th or 5th grade student this assessment, they're going to automatically look at it and think, whoa, 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 why am I getting something so low? What's going on here? It might create an automatic deficit in just motivation right off the bat. If you're doing the online one, it's automatically going to pop up, so that's where you're going to explain to the student why you're going backwards. You want to be as honest with the student as possible, because if you're not honest with them, you're not going to be able to learn where their true deficits are. So I will sit down with the student and say, we're going to give you this assessment. I know you're in this grade, but the reason I'm giving you this one is I want to see what we need to do to make sure you're 100% for this grade. So just make sure you keep that in mind and just use those tips when you're working with the students. Excuse me. If at any point you do feel this needs to be addressed deeper, please know that it is taken care of at the school level. The way this is done is the parent must send a letter of request to the school requesting formal comprehensive testing. The letter must come from a parent or legal guardian, I should say, actually. You can help the parent write it. You can help them kind of think of verbiage, but it must be signed by the parent. It must be turned in by the parent. I would actually advise the tutor to kind of step out at this point and let the parent go to the school and advocate. You can advocate with the parent in the session where maybe you're talking about, let's write this letter, or with the coordinator, but the parent should be the one turning the letter in and doing all of that. The parent can turn it in to anyone at the school. who would be on the team. So that would be a school psychologist, social worker, homeless liaison. When we are working with student disabilities, what's going to happen if a formal request is acknowledged and the student is tested, they're going to compose, it's called many different things actually, but one of the things I like calling it is a student support team. Some people call it a student study team, which I find kind of creepy because you're not really studying the kid. There's also been like the testing team. I prefer student support team. It's made up of the school psychologist, occupational and physical therapist, speech and language pathologist, and educational specialist. The educational specialist would be the one who's testing for those academic traits. So once that's done and the team's happening, that's when you kind of let the school take care over there. They're going to do the actual assessments and go through with the logistics and the actual process after that. If that's happening, then you have done an amazing job. You have basically supported the student and been a voice for them to even get this process up and rolling. What I've also done here is listed a couple of the major learning disabilities, just so I can give you guys a quick little background on them. First one is auditory processing disorder. It's when students do not recognize subtle differences between sounds and words. So that could be something between a student not hearing the difference between chair and there. They don't hear the difference between ch and the. To them, it just sounds the same. It could even be the difference between, I know one sentence I use a lot with the students is comprehension of information. That shun sound at the end blends for a student if they have auditory processing disorder. So they just hear a lot of shun, but it is shun. So they can't process the sounds that other people can hear. So for example, if you're in a restaurant and there's 3 conversations happening at the table, you might be able to hear the difference in sounds between people's voices, tones, accents. Someone with auditory processing disorder might not be able to separate all that. So they can't filter out that outside noise. They might hear those 3 or 4 different conversations happening at one time. Dyscalculia is basically the math version of dyslexia. It might be students who can't comprehend math symbols. So that could be something where they're not understanding the 9 or the 4. They're not seeing a difference between a 1 and a 7. Little things like that tend to confuse a student. And even seeing a plus sign and a multiplication sign, the X and the plus, those can get even construed backwards for a student with this disorder or disability. Dysgraphia is the handwriting ability and fine motor skills. This could be a student who can't properly hold a pencil due to fine motor skills. They can't put spaces in between their words. This is going to be a student whose writing is very sloppy at all times, and to them it looks neat, so there's difficulty with that. And then dyslexia affects reading and related language-based processing skills. So this might be that it literally hurts a student to read sometimes. It is hurting their eyes because it's blurry. The letters are backwards. It's confusing. So when students say their head hurts or reading hurts, they might genuinely mean it hurts their head. It might not just be they're stressed out emotionally it hurts. Physically, their head might hurt from the pain of having to read and process all of this different stuff. It's basically like when you're stressed and get a headache. Kids get stressed from even looking at letters and numbers sometimes, and it develops headaches. I added a link to the bottom to this website. I really enjoy the Learning Disabilities Associations of America website because they link to the different types of disabilities, and when you click on those links, it actually gives you various tips on how to deal with them along with age variations. So if you ever have any indication of a disability or an actual diagnosis, please utilize this website because it's going to give you a lot of great tips. All right. Next, we're going to move on to the next question we got, which is, where can I get some exercises for myself so I can help her better? What I'm taking from this is help my student better, and I loved this question because one of the best pieces of advice I got lately is you can't fill from an empty cup. So basically you have to make sure you're full and you're happy before you can help others. So this list that I have, these tips that I have here are going to make sure you do that. So the first thing I would suggest you do, and please know I've done all of this stuff, so I know it works, and it's stuff that's been utilized and done before. So make a list. Sit down and literally write down, what did you want from a teacher when you were a kid? It's been a long time since you were at school, probably. So what did you want from your teacher? Was your teacher super strict? Did they not listen to you? Did they never ask you questions? What did you want from a teacher when you were younger? And use that. Whatever you wanted as a kid, kids haven't changed much, so they most likely want the same things. Even around here at the center, I tell the kids all the time, what do you want? Or what do you need? And they look at me so confused because they don't get those choices very often. So that would be something I'd definitely assess. What do you want from the teacher? What does this kid want from you? And that should definitely help you feel a little bit better. I would also make a list of your top character traits. For myself, I've done this before, and I know my top of my list, I always have creativity. I love being creative. I love coming up with different things all the time and just changing it up. So I use that. I make sure that when I'm working with a student, I'm constantly changing it up to make sure I can make them happy or make them understand, help them understand better. I can't make them, but I can help them. And finding different ways to utilize my strengths. Even knowing what aren't my strengths. Excuse me. I know personally for me, one of my strengths, something that's not one of my strengths is working with math, and I just don't really have the patience or the confidence when I come up with an answer at the end. And I'm able to apply that with students. How can we together feel confident in this answer? How can we together find the patience to get through this? And knowing what my strengths and weaknesses are definitely going to benefit. Next, take a day and live as your student. I don't mean literally, don't check into a homeless shelter, but follow their schedule. I did this one Sunday and I was shocked. I know one of my students, I asked them what's life like at the Union Rescue Mission, and they're up at 5:30 in the morning, showered by 6:30, breakfast by 7, and I've never done that before. So I did it one day, and I was not a fan. I was already drained and tired by 9:30. I wanted to take a nap, but I know the kids didn't have nap times at school, so I pushed through my day. I had to eat lunch at a certain time, and then you go to bed at a certain time. No naps in between, and it's tough. It is very tough. So just being able to have that empathy for your student is definitely going to help them better too, because now you understand what they're going through. You might understand why they're so tired, why their hand hurts so much, why they can't stop rubbing their eyes. Little things like that are definitely going to boost up your empathy, and you're going to increase your confidence in working with your student because now you know what they're going through and you guys can go through it together. Definitely do the work without the same resources as the students. I definitely love when I have a tutor here who's an accountant. I love telling them, I dare you to go to work tomorrow and don't use a calculator, because a lot of our students might not have that. So imagine telling an accountant, you can't use a calculator. I'm taking away one of your main resources. One time I was studying for a test, and I made sure that when I was doing it, I didn't use some of the resources that I would typically have. So I went into a noisy room. In a shelter, the kids might want a quiet space. I went into a noisy room to get the work done so I understand what the kid's going through. And, I only used pencils. I couldn't use the internet or Google to look something up. Little things like that really help you understand what your student's going through and figure out how you can help them better, figure out a way through those lack of resources, I should say. Also, you want to refresh your own personal skills. Take that assessment I showed you guys a few minutes ago. I took it. I took the 7th grade assessment, and I need to take a lower one. But it's definitely going to help you understand where your skills lie, what your student's going through, how hard it is to remember all those little steps and those foundations as you're constantly building on new subjects. Think about it. If you're in a math class, you're learning new steps and you're remembering all those previous steps. Then you go to reading. You're learning new steps while remembering all those previous steps. So at your age, whatever your age may be, you might need refreshers on skills as well. And in order to understand that your student might need that, you should take some assessments, take some tests, and see how things are going. Also, I would suggest doing some worksheets. I've actually done this. I took an Algebra 2 workbook from here and started doing the worksheets. It's a very big change of pace because a lot of our students don't get to go online and do different online tests like Khan Academy. It's great when they do, but just know sometimes they don't. So you want to be able to say, you know, I've done these worksheets. I know what it's like to do all this right. I know how tired your hand might get. You can finally understand what the kid's going through. I would definitely suggest on any of these that you might do, share them with your student. You know, let them know, I kind of want to see what you're going through. I want to be here for you. We are a team. If you help them understand you're a team and share with them the results of your assessment, show them your character traits, show them maybe some tips that you dealt with you were feeling sleepy if you copied their schedule, and work on that together. Definitely try to draw parallels, and you guys will strengthen that bond between each other a lot more. All right. Next question was, I can't get a response from my student's teacher. Is there something else to try? When I approached this question, I wasn't really sure what you have tried, what hasn't been tried. So as I answer this, I'm going at it with completely blank slate, and I'm just going to kind of give everybody general tips on how to communicate and what to do. So as a former teacher, I'm going to keep it real and let you know, email is best. I barely got any phone messages that came through the front desk at the schools I worked at. It's just a big long line of people. Sometimes I wouldn't get the message till the next morning, until I even saw the front desk lady sometimes. So just know email is best if you have it and if you can use it. When you're communicating with the teacher, you want to stress taking away the workload as opposed to creating more. So when you're emailing or communicating with these teachers, don't mention, you know, I'm working with the student and I'm asking for worksheet ideas or ideas on what to do together. You want to say, I'm working with the student. I want to make sure they're extremely successful in your classroom. What can I do in terms of skills that you want me to work on? Ask for skills. Ask for observations as opposed to work and physical suggestions. If a tutor can say, right, or a teacher can email back saying, right now the student hasn't turned in this project. Boom. Now you know I need to work on this with this student. The one reason for this, as a former teacher, whenever I got an email from an outside source saying, so I'm working with the student, I'm wondering if you can send me some websites or some links, my first thought is, I'm not doing enough during the day already. Now you want me to look up even more? No, thank you. So please let us know. Let the teacher know you're there for them. If I got an email saying, I'm working with this student, how can I make sure that they're successful in class? I'd write back, you know, right now we're working on subtraction. Can you continue working on that? The student failed the last spelling test. Can you look up their spelling words for this week? Something that I can just tell you real quick and we can work on together is going to be very effective. You want to share notes that are applicable to the class only. I've gotten emails from tutors saying, so I was working with a student and they said that they were doing this the other day and then they're stressed out while they're reading. I don't need their life story. I don't have time for it. I have enough observations from my day. Please just keep it short. Keep it simple. Let me know. I noticed the student's been failing spelling test later. I'll be doing more. Please let me know if I can do anything else. Keep it just short, sweet, and simple for the teachers like that. Another thing you can do is involve the student. So these tips I'm going to give you work for various age levels. The first one is going to be a little bit for older students. All of my middle schoolers are required to have an agenda. The school actually gives each student an agenda. So a lot of times if you just go to the admin office or the counseling office and ask, they'll give the student a planner or an agenda. So I'll have the students write in it every day and we'll initial it together. I'll have the students ask for initials from the teacher to make sure everything's up to date. If they hear any tests or anything coming up, to take it out and write in it. I give them points for getting it done in time. I have students coming up to me saying, oh, Miss Allison, don't forget, I get out of school early next week. And that's something I will tell you it took a couple weeks/months to accomplish, but it's something that's finally accomplished. I find it's a very important skill because you want to make sure that these kids can advocate for themselves with or without you. And if you're constantly feeling the need to check in on how they're doing, it's not really going to set them up for success in the future. So we want to make sure that they can self-check as well, and they can feel confident that they're getting responses from their teacher. Another thing I've tried before, and this one's hit or miss, but mostly hit, which is good, why I like to suggest it. I'll compile a small list of questions that I have, and I have the student go and ask the teacher. So I might just write down with the student, you know, what are you guys working on math? I don't know. I get that a lot. So let's just write a letter to your teacher saying, what is the number one thing we're working on in math? Or what's the next subject we're going to be working on? And the kid just asks the teacher. They don't have to say, my tutor wants to know, or I have a letter from my tutor. They could just say, hey, Miss so-and-so or Mr. so-and-so, quick question. And they can just get a quick answer. There's no need for something formal. The kid could write it down for you. They can, if possible, the teacher can assign it and say, yep, that's what I said, for a little extra check. But the main thing about this is it's going to teach kids self-advocacy. It's going to teach kids to go ahead and ask the tutor or the teacher the questions that they need and they want to get answered. So that would be definitely something that you could do to get working together. All right. So the next thing that we're going to do is I have another question. The question was, well, more of a statement. I don't feel supported at times with her following up on work or homework she is given. There are always excuses as to why she doesn't do it. I have formed alliances with other adults working with her, but the response is the same, minimal progress. So what I did here was I broke it down into a couple main topics, which is follow-up, teams, and minimal progress. So the first thing we're going to talk about is follow-up. And I also wanted to mention that a lot of the questions that I'm answering have a really big connect. So I'm going to go back here real quick. Involving the students, the next part we're going to connect to is follow-up. So if you feel like you're not getting follow-up from the student's teacher, the next question we're going to address actually shows you ways to get that follow-up with or without the teacher support. All right. All right, now we're going. So for follow-up, what I'm going to talk about is a couple ways you can get that follow-up on your own. So some of the little kids and I here, we play backpack detective. Basically what that means is I tell the kids we're going to be detectives and we're going to look through their backpack and we're going to find any paperwork with grades on it, with teacher corrections, with notes, so that we can now, the tutor can now use those papers and those notes for their own follow-up. You know, now you could see how the kid's been doing. Now you can kind of investigate and see how the student's been doing based on notes in the backpack, based on papers you find. I'm surprised at how often I think the kids aren't getting their homework checked, and then I find a random folder with like 6 weeks worth of homework and they'll have check pluses on top, and I'm like, sweet, somebody's actually checking this. So please feel free to play backpack detective and look through the kids' backpacks. Check how things are going and check on what they're working on. Sometimes we'll even get what we call points for proof. So if there's absolutely nothing in the backpack, I'll tell the student, if you could bring me stuff from school to prove you're actually what you're working on, or you took this test, then you get points. Your points, we're going to talk about behavior and motivation later, so we can address more on points in that aspect. But that's something we'll do. I'll tell the student, bring me your spelling test and I'll give you some points. And those points don't even have to be a literal points. It could just be 5 extra minutes on free time or 2 extra minutes per worksheet you brought in, something to kind of motivate them to bring it to you. They might also not want to bring it because they're really embarrassed by the scores on it. So those points might just be, look, you're just getting points for bringing me the paperwork. I don't care if it has a 0 or 100 on it. You brought me a paper and I'm proud of you for that, so you're going to get the credit for that. So please know, a lot of times kids hide their work because they're so embarrassed by what the scores look like, and that's why you might not be getting any follow-up. We had one student here at the Learning Center who every day we did her homework, and I got a letter from the teacher saying she's getting a 0 on homework, nothing's getting turned in. Turns out that every morning before she'd get to class, she would pull it out of her backpack and throw it away because she was really embarrassed about how it looked and she thought it was all wrong. And that was just something that we had to work on her for. We'd give her points for turning it in, regardless if it was right or wrong. And that really motivated her just to feel good about being finished and getting that accomplishment versus the anxiety of the judgment after turning it in. Right here I have a little image that can help as well. So when you think of planners, please keep in mind that they can be for any age, any group. Right here, this one I simply pulled it off of Google Images, and you don't even have to use the verbiage on here. You can even change the word homework to worksheet, to study chart or behavior chart. That could be adapted to anything. You can even put the student's name and have it say like Natasha's chart, so it's not even anything specific, and you just have the kid feel like there's something there that's for them. You can change for the week of, for the day of, for the hour of. You can utilize this in many aspects. I even have one student where instead of Monday, Tuesday, it says mom, teacher, caseworker, so she has to check in with everybody, and that's a part of the team that we're working on together. And we're getting that follow-up from everybody, and I'm seeing some type of follow-up. So right now I also wanted to mention the academic and social use of these planners and charts. It doesn't have to be homework. Let the students know that this could be something that they can include. Party plans for the weekend, you know, something that they're going to go do. I have middle schoolers here all the time that write down their volleyball games and which friends are going to come see them at that game. And that's just motivation to use the agendas and charts even more and not feel like it's just only for being checked up on and being checked in on your homework. Excuse me. All right. Next, we're going to talk about the teams that are formed with the students. So in the previous question, they mentioned, I have formed alliances with other adults working with her, but the response is the same. I know a lot of times tutors want to work with a team, but I want to mention, what are you guys talking about when you mean a team? So I want you to think about these main questions. Who is on your team, first of all? Is the team, are you doing something excessive where you're trying to get too many people involved? Is the team somewhere simple where it's just mom, tutor, kid? You know, is that the team? And what is the student's view of the team? One of the reasons I really like asking this question, especially to myself when we're working with a student, is what do they think we're trying to accomplish? Does the kid look at us and think this group of adults is just always telling me what I'm doing wrong? Is that what this team's all about? Is this group of adults here to judge me and tell me what else I need to fix? Or is this team genuinely here to help me? You want to make sure that the kid just doesn't hear the word, oh, we're your team. They need to know what side this team's on. You know, is this the good guy, the bad guy, offense, defense? What's happening here? So make sure that the student perceives the team positively. And a lot of times, please don't forget, is the student on the team? You know, is the student an active member in the process? Do they have a say in their follow-up process? Do they have a say on how they're being supported? I can't stress the importance enough of the student feeling included, because if the kid does not feel included, they're not going to have that motivation at all to do anything in regards to homework or making you guys proud or feeling accomplished, because you're not a part of the team. You know, it's just something that the kid needs to understand. And I always want the tutors to know that the kids are a part of this and we're all in this together, and we're not doing this for them, we're doing this with them. So please make them a part of the team and keep those ideas in mind when you're working together. Next thing I'm going to talk about is progress. You know, what do you do when you feel like you and the team and the student, anybody, feels like nothing's getting done, nothing's being accomplished? So something that's very important is a student self-assessment. Right here I have a little rubric. It does look like it could be for older students, but I have middle school students all the time change the wording to I can do it without mistakes. Like my middle schoolers were right, I got this. You know, and at the bottom it's like, I need help, or my bad, something like that, so the kids can understand how they're feeling, the progress that they're making. So definitely you want to make sure that you're not just telling the student how they're doing. You want the student to sit back and understand how they're doing as well. A lot of times when a student shows me their work and says, Miss Allison, look, I finished. I have nothing to say, but I'll just look at them and say, cool, how do you feel? Because I want them to say, I feel really good. I'm like, well, you should feel good. This is really great. I'm proud of you for being done. I want them to tell me how they feel first, because I don't want them to just think, oh, I should feel good because Miss Allison said, oh, this is good. You know, I don't want to be proud of myself because Miss Allison says she's proud of me. I want the student to understand their feelings and their progress and their expectations before I'm automatically implanting that into their head. One thing you could do, we talked about list earlier. Let's list those expectations that you do have. I know a lot of times that some people might want to accomplish many different things. And when you think of things you want to accomplish, your expectations might sound a little extreme. So I might write down an expectation that might be student learns multiplication. Like looking at that, yeah, that makes sense. I want them to learn their multiplication, but that's a big expectation. So let's kind of readjust our expectations, look at some benchmarks. Do I want to tell my student we're learning multiplication, or do I want to tell my student we're going to learn 2 through 3, or I mean like 0 through 5 multiplication? Are we setting appropriate standards for these kids to reach so that you do feel like you're making progress? Benchmarks are really important so that you feel like you're making progress. You feel like you're reaching mini goals along the way, and it's just not a constant uphill battle. You do have those rest stops along the way. Adaptations. Adaptations are very important. And when I say adaptations, I don't mean how to make it work. I mean how to change it up if it doesn't work. So if you're noticing these benchmarks aren't being reached, don't try to adapt a little bit. Change it up. Stop doing multiplication. Go back to subtraction and see if you need to completely adapt what you're doing, because you're not going to make any progress in one subject if you have no foundation in the other subjects. That was a big red flag for myself, is I would constantly worry about the students who had no reading comprehension. You know, they weren't comprehending what they're reading, and they weren't meeting the benchmarks of remembering the who or remembering the what. I had to stop and readapt and think, are they even interested in what they're reading? And if you're not even interested in that, let's completely change that. Maybe we should be reading a different subject altogether. Or should we even be reading right now full books or sentences? Should we just stick to flashcards? How can you adapt it in a way to make sure that they're still understanding the context? Another thing that we've done is a catch-up book. So the reason I spell it ketchup like the food is because a lot of times kids hear the word catch up, like run and catch up, and they feel defeated. So we just make it a little silly play on words so that they don't feel like this is a book that makes them less than. Right here on the side, I have a little example of what you can make, but it's a simple composition book, and we had students just pull up pictures off the internet, draw pictures themselves, glue it on there, make it their own personalization, and on the inside, it's a reference guide to what they're doing. It could be, let me show you real quick this next slide, it could be things like this where they go online and they find things to help them remember. You know, we use a subtraction poem a lot to help kids stay on track. So this is something they could take back to the classroom with them, not be so embarrassed. They're taking out like a study guide. It looks like a journal, look a little bit more mature information for parts of speech for older students. So this is the stuff that can be kept inside of the journal so that students can feel supported even with or without you. They can see the progress that's being made. Another thing that I've done before, a lot of kids are into video games. So what we've done with the books is you level up. So we might have a page where it says multiplication, and it might have like 10 squares, and each square says like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And as soon as you learn all your ones, you color in that square, and then you go to level 2. You go to level, then you learn all your 2s, then you color in that square, you go up to level 3. So the kids are seeing some type of process, some type of motivation. They're getting that progress going along. I know for a lot of the older students, we'll put like goal achieved or mastery unlocked on top so that they feel like they're in a video game. So make it very personal. The more personal you get with the students, and the more comfortable they're going to feel, and the more it's going to connect with them. Inside there, you're also going to want to add motivating quotes. It might sound a little cheesy to some kids, but even finding music lyrics that they're really into, that's a motivational quote. You don't have to look at a motivational quote and think it has to be like Benjamin Franklin or Thomas Jefferson. A motivational quote can seriously come from Taylor Swift if that's motivating to the student. And a lot of times, the students might need that from you. They might need you to remember that they're just kids, and we have to kind of think on their level as well. In here, you also want to have the students write down their successes. I've had students cut out like the A+ from their test and put it on the cover and little things like that so that they're constantly seeing stuff that makes them feel positive. All right. Next, we have another, actually, I got a couple different questions that really kind of overlapped. So what I did was I added them all here, and we're going to address them all together in various different ways. So quick overview, the questions were, I currently don't have a student, but my former student in 3rd grade struggled with her motivation to do well in school. How do you help a teen student who says they want tutoring but gets frustrated quickly and likes to quit halfway through the session? And how do you help a distracted student regain their focus during tutoring sessions? So this is the part where we're going to talk about motivation, focus, and frustration. One of the main things that is important when working with a student is taking out just the idea that you're working on academics, because academics comes from your mind, and if your mind's not healthy, it's going to be really hard to do academics. So right now, motivation, that comes from a healthy mind. And in order to get that motivation, you need to kind of understand your own mindset and where you're coming from. Character traits are extremely important when thinking about this. So right now I want you to think about your own character traits. You know, do you understand how to self-motivate? If you're stressed out at work and you're sitting at your desk, do you know how to take a minute to motivate yourself to get through this project? Take a deep breath. Do you put in your headphones? Do you rub your eyes? Do you put your hands in your forehead and you just kind of groan a little bit? And what does that feel like? What does it feel like to motivate when you get out of that motivation? A lot of times, kids don't understand how to self-motivate. They don't even know what it feels like to be motivated. So if you don't know how to feel motivated, how do you motivate yourself? So keep this in mind. A lot of times you're going to tell a student, you know, you got this, you could do this. How? How do they have that? How are they going to do that? Those sayings aren't sayings without the work behind it. So sit down with your student. Right here I have a website, Via Character. It's a website you can go to, and it asks you a bunch of questions where and then it lists your character traits. I actually did this, and creativity came up number 1, which I was really excited. But what it does is it lists your character traits in order from the ones that showed up most prevalent in your responses to the ones that showed up least. And it really shows you where your values lie, where your mindset even lies. And that's a great tool to help students, even to help them understand, are you creative? Are you self-motivating? Do you have self-control? Are you grateful? You know, go through all those little things to help them feel that motivation. Also, you want to counter frustration with coping skills. Our students might not have coping skills to deal with frustration. Some adults don't have coping skills to deal with frustration. You know, coping skills could be something from doing yoga to taking a 10-minute break. They could be going online and watching Netflix for half an hour to writing in your journal for 30 minutes. You know, coping skills differ for everybody. So please, when you're working with your students, keep that in mind. Do they even know how to do these things? You're constantly telling them to be motivated, don't be frustrated, but do they even know what you're talking about and how to do that for you? All right. Next, we're going to talk more about motivation and focus. So one thing I have here is some game boards. This is a great way to help a student feel motivated and to stay focused along the way. So the game boards we have here are just two really, one silly example and one really formal example. And basically your goal is to break down each of these little squares into intervals. So it could be every 5 minutes you're staying focused, every 5 math problems you finish, every 1 paragraph you read. All of these little things could be adjusted to whatever suits your student needs. That's going to be great motivation. The further they go along the trail, the more they're going to feel motivated. They're going to see their progress and want to make more. They're also going to stay focused because it's going to be a constant reminder of why they're doing it. What's the point? What are we even working on? If they can see that board and be able to move a piece around it, even if that piece is a balled up piece of paper, or I've even ripped the eraser off the tip of a pencil once, even using that, it's something to help them stay focused. They get excited to move that little piece along the board. Right here I have a cute little chart. This is just something that we've used to help students understand their verbiage. So if they're saying like, I can't do it, I'm asking them like, you really can't or you don't want to try? You know, let's go up here, how do I do it? Do you even know how to do it? Is that why you can't do it? So let's try to figure out how we can work our way up these steps and kind of make it to the very top where you feel accomplished. Sometimes I will straight up look at a student and be like, you know what, sweetie, none of these are working. You just won't do it right now. I just see, and it's not that they're being counterproductive or anything. They just genuinely might not feel up for it. They might be super tired. They might be feeling a lot of anxiety. So don't think I won't do it is just like, I won't do it because you're telling me I just don't want to. I won't do it means I might need a nap. It might also just mean I won't do it because you told me to. So just keep in mind that not everything is I'm not doing this because or just to be oppositional. Keep in mind some kids' mindset is just I won't do it. They haven't been taught the mindset to make their way up these steps. The reason I give so many different options right here is because I want tutors to realize that or understand that I really want you to personalize everything. Every student is different. And when I talk about all these different tips and tricks I do, in the back of my head I'm thinking of the 40 other different ways that I've implemented them throughout the different kids. So all of this can be personalized to fit what you can handle, number one, and what the student needs, number two. All right, next we're going to talk about focus and frustration. So a lot of times we talk about focus and frustration, and they do go hand in hand. A lot of times tutors get frustrated because their kid's not focused. Kids are trying so hard to get focused that they're frustrated because they're not understanding. These really do go hand in hand a lot. So first of all, we want to make sure when you say, my kid's not focused, really? Are they really, really not focused? Because everybody focuses different. I know when I'm sitting in a meeting, I might be doodling or clicking my pen or fiddling with my fingers. I'm comprehending everything that's happening. I might never look up at the PowerPoint because it looks confusing to me, but I am comprehending everything that's going on. So you want to check in with your student to make sure they are focused before constantly telling them, you need to focus, refocus, you're not focused. So if I'm working with a student and I feel that they're losing focus, I might stop what I'm saying and say, okay, what did I just say? And right away, I'll have students say, oh, you were talking about this, this, and this. Or you'll get the student that looks up and she like, I don't know, I wasn't listening, because they're so caught off guard. They genuinely are like, I don't know. So find out, first of all, if they're focused or not. Don't assume that a kid who's looking at their fingers and twiddling is not paying attention to you. Also, I've done this with students where as soon as I'm done speaking to see if they were focused, I'll tell them, okay, list X amount of things that I just talked about, or list 2 things that you remember that we just talked about. And that's a great way to make sure that they did pay attention. They might not have understood every single word you said, but I don't know any adult that goes into a meeting and understands and remembers every single thing the speaker said. So kids are the same way. They're going to remember the important parts, and that's what you want to make sure that they take away from that as well. Another thing I'll do is incorrect wording. This is actually really fun. So if I'm talking to a kid and I think that they're not focused, to me, their body language is showing me that they're just not paying attention. What I do is mid-sentence, I'll completely change things up. So an example might say, I'm working with a student and I'll say, okay, so while we're reading The Cat in the Hat, the fish was talking about how him and the cat were eating green eggs and ham in Narnia. And the kid looks at me and goes, yep, that's right. Okay, you're not focused. You're not listening because I just totally made all of that up. So being able to kind of throw it in there. I've even had students look at me like, this Allison, are you crazy? That's not what we're talking about. And great, you're focused. And now we're joking around and it's silly. So it kind of broke the tension a little bit. It helps people stay focused. And it's a great way to help the kid understand where their mindset is instead of constantly being told, focus, focus, focus. Next thing is baseline. Everybody is different. So what level of focus are you judging this student on? How long, baseline basically means how long before they lose focus. Can they last 5 minutes before they're completely off and looking at the corner of the walls? Can they last 8 minutes? Can they last 12 minutes? Can they last literally 1 minute? So kind of do some observations. Take a look at how long it takes before they lose focus and then utilize that. That's when you can go back to the behavior chart and say, okay, my student loses focus every 10 minutes. So let's say each one of these squares is 8 minutes, and if every 8 minutes they stay focused, blah, 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 the next time we do it, we'll do 5, and we'll keep decreasing it so the student is making progress. Also wanted to mention, if you're doing observations, when the kid does lose focus, what just happened? You know, what is that trigger that might be frustrating them? What is that trigger that might be very distracting to them? I know for myself, one of the triggers for me to lose focus is if somebody starts talking to me. I will completely forget what I'm doing. I'm now focused on this conversation, and then I don't usually go back to what I was doing because now I'm in a new mindset. I'm now social. Let's get up and talk. Let's get up and clean. So that I know for myself, that's one of my triggers for losing focus. So what is triggering this student to get frustrated? Is it always when it gets to the multiplication of a problem? Is it always when it gets to a conflict in the story that you're reading? And that's definitely also going to help you combat those triggers once you find out what the catalyst is. On the side right here, I have 2 quick pictures of things that we use in general just to help with focus and frustration. This combats and decreases when it's happening, but when a student is losing focus, a lot of times it could be a sensory issue where they just can't sit still, they just can't be focused on one thing. So being able to give them a stress ball made of various objects is very helpful to keep in one hand, the pen clicking in one hand. Fidget toys. Fidget toys are great, especially when students start to feel frustration. Fidget toys are something that a student puts in their hand, and when they're starting to feel frustrated, they focus on the toy in hand. So say, for example, they're holding the little slinky. If a student's starting to feel frustrated and I hand them that, I might start talking to them about like, okay, how fast can you make it go back and forth? Let's see it fall off the table. We're not distracting them. We're helping them reground so that you can deal with the frustration. So once they do calm down, feel a little bit better, then I'm able to say, okay, now that you're breathing better, we're taking deep breaths, let's go back to the math problem at the moment that you got frustrated. And it's helping the student understand that it is perfectly okay to feel anxiety and to get nervous and to be frustrated. What's not okay is letting it overpower and letting it take over. So for the student to be able to find ways to combat that and feel motivated and feel focused and not frustrated is definitely some of the things you're going to want to look out for. On that note, that was all the questions that were submitted. So definitely wanted to remind everybody that please take everything I said as a brainstorming tool and just a little foundation to build on your own and utilize with your student as you need.
Thank you, Allison. Anybody have any more questions, please submit it. We just had one asking about the assessments. you talked about the paper assessments. Just to clarify how they translate to online. Do you want me to go over that? Do you want to say how you can submit if you do a paper one, then submit it?
Well, actually, here at the Learning Center, I mentioned we assess every kid. We only do the paper ones, actually. So what we do is we give the student the paper one, and then it's submitted online. So basically, I'll click right here real quick. I could show you. If I give the kid the paper one, then I just go and click on the online and submit it myself, and then I'll have all the results. So I just click in the bubbles and fill it in for the student real quick, and then no joke, within 5 minutes I get an email letting me know the student got this one right, this one wrong, and the email comes in like a big bubble too. So it's a big green bubble that says this one was correct, a red bubble that says it's incorrect. And that's definitely been very helpful to even just print out that email and show the students how many reds they have, how many greens. I've even had students ask to retake it once they see how many reds. Like, I didn't know that's what it was for, and I didn't know that's what it was going to show you. Can I do it again? So definitely either option works. I find students like doing the paper one because it's a tangible thing they can write on and it helps them stay more focused, and then just submitting it online. But either way, the results are great and they come in really quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I can point you to specific topic areas that you could address, and we can also help you if you need more input. I don't see any more questions here. Last chance because we're a little bit over the hour. But we really appreciate Allison answering the questions that were submitted ahead of time. So I guess we'll wrap this up.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. And again, if you have any questions, go ahead and email us. Allison is a wealth of knowledge, and I'm a researcher of resources. So between the two of us, we can figure it out.
Hope it helped.
Thanks again for joining us. Well, thanks for tutoring as well. Thanks.